Whether you're looking for your next big competitive obsession or just a great MOBA game to play on the go, these are my top 10 mobile MOBA games. Welcome to Ken Talks Games. Let's get into it. Number 10, Vainglory. Okay, I already know what some of you are thinking. Didn't you just say these are games you'd actually recommend people download? I did, and technically you can still play Vainglory. This one is here because I don't think you can talk about mobile MOBAs without mentioning the game that proved just how good a MOBA on your phone can actually be. Vainglory had last hitting, wave control, vision, active items, fog of war, and those incredibly precise tap controls that gave it a much more traditional MOBA feel. It originally built its identity around 3v3 before eventually expanding to a full 5v5, and at its peak, it even had a legitimate competitive esports scene. Unfortunately, development eventually slowed down, and the game was shifted into this community edition. So while the core game is still playable, a lot of the progression and social features people expect from a modern live service game just aren't there anymore. So would I tell you to make Vainglory your new obsession? No. But if you love MOBAs, I would absolutely tell you to experience it at least once. Because Vainglory may not be the future of mobile MOBAs anymore, but it absolutely helped prove they had one. Number 9, Blitz of Battle. Instead of taking the usual 5v5 formula and shrinking it down, Blitz of Battle is built around 2v2 matches that last about 3 minutes. And 3 minutes sounds really short for a MOBA, but it still has a lot of stuff that you'd expect. Heroes with different roles, abilities and buildings, towers, jungle objectives, ranked play, and actual team strategy. The difference is that with only 2 people on a team, you can't really disappear into the background. You're literally half the team, so positioning, timing, and working with your teammate matter a lot more. And I kind of like that idea, because sometimes I want to play a MOBA, but I don't necessarily want to sign onto a 30-minute contract every time I hit Q. The community is still much smaller than the giants we're going to talk about later, but it's already organizing tournaments, sharing builds, and even helping shape the game through developer feedback. So if you want something competitive that you can genuinely play in short bursts, Blitz of Battle might be one of the better hidden gems on this list. Number 8, Heroes Evolved. This is one of those MOBAs that feels like it should have disappeared by now, but it just hasn't, and I mean that as a compliment. Heroes Evolved sticks pretty close to the classic MOBA formula: 5v5, 3 lanes, towers, a jungle, different roles, and a huge roster with over 120 heroes. So, if you're coming from something like League or Dota, you're not going to spend your first few matches wondering what you're supposed to be doing. But what surprised me is just how much it actually packed into it. Outside of the standard 5v5 mode, there are 3v3 and 1v1 modes, custom matches, and they even throw an auto chess mode in there because apparently why not? And despite being one of the older games on this list, it's still getting updates, events, skins, and balance changes, which is honestly impressive considering how many mobile MOBAs have launched and disappeared in the same amount of time. Now it's not perfect. With that many heroes, balance can get messy. But if you want a traditional MOBA with a massive roster that's somehow still standing after all these years, Heroes Evolved has earned its place here. Number 7, Legends of Ace. At first glance, this looks like a pretty traditional MOBA, but then you get into the way the builds work, and that's where things get interesting. Instead of buying items during the match, Legend of Ace replaces the traditional item shop with a card system. You build your card setup around your hero, and there are hundreds of cards that can change how the character's played. We've all played MOBA games where we spent the first few matches staring at the item shop and thinking, okay, what am I supposed to buy? This cuts out a lot of that confusion. It also means you're spending less time standing in base shopping and more time actually playing the game. I think the whole TCG meets MOBA idea gives it enough of its own identity to keep it from feeling like a League clone. So if you like a traditional MOBA but want something a little different when it comes to builds and customization, Legend of Ace is worth giving a shot. Number 6, Onmyoji Arena. This might be the prettiest MOBA on this entire list. Onmyoji Arena takes a traditional 5v5 formula and wraps it in a beautiful Japanese-inspired world based around NetEase's Onmyoji series. Instead of champions or heroes, you're playing a Shikigami, and there are now over 100 of them, each with their own abilities, roles, and honestly, some really good character designs. But thankfully, it's not just pretty. Still got all the things you'd expect. But there are some interesting choices here. The map is symmetrical, there's a fog of war system that adds more importance to vision and positioning, and instead of locking power behind a paid rune style system, it uses the Onmyoji system, or pre-match rune mastery pages that lets players customize their Shikigami stats and passive traits before the battle begins. I think that's why it's one of the easiest to overlook. You see the anime aesthetic and might assume that's the entire selling point, but underneath all that is actually a pretty traditional, fully featured MOBA. It even has a bunch of side modes when you want to break the standard 5v5, including Shikigami Brawl, and some much weirder modes because apparently MOBA Mahjong is a thing. So if you want the familiar MOBA experience but with a completely different style and atmosphere, Onmyoji Arena is absolutely worth looking at. Number 5. Arena of Valor. This one has a really interesting place in mobile MOBA history, because before Honor of Kings became the global name it is now, Arena of Valor was basically Tencent and Teamy's big push to bring that style of MOBA to players outside of China. And if you've played both games, you can definitely see the shared DNA. Gameplay-wise, Arena of Valor is pretty traditional, so if you've played League, Mobile Legends, or really any classic MOBA, you can jump in and understand what's going on pretty quickly, because Arena of Valor isn't trying to completely reinvent the genre. It's more focused on giving you the traditional MOBA experience in a format that works really well on mobile. What's also interesting is that while the game might not feel nearly as big in places like North America, it still has much stronger communities in other parts of the world, and its esports scene is still actively in markets like Vietnam, and the developers are literally still hiring around the Arena of Valor esports. So if you want something familiar, polished, and already proven to have some staying power, Arena of Valor is still an easy one to recommend. Number 4. Pokémon Unite. People see Pokemon and assume this is the baby MOBA. And yes, Unite is definitely one of the easiest games on this list to pick up. Matches are only about 10 minutes, and there's no traditional item shop during the match. And instead of destroying the enemy base, you're collecting Eos energy and scoring it into goal zones. But once you start climbing your ranked, you realize pretty quickly that simple does not mean brainless. You still have jungling, rotations, team composition, farming, objective control, and knowing to score versus when you need to help your team. But because matches are so short, one bad decision can still snowball really fast, especially the final stretch. Unite has always loved giving you a massive late game objective that can completely flip the match, meaning you can dominate for 8 minutes, lose one team fight, and suddenly you're staring at the results screen wondering what just happened. The game has continued changing those major objectives and map strategies over time, and I think the chaos is part of what makes Unite fun. It gives you enough MOBA strategy to actually sink your teeth into, but packages it into something fast and approachable enough that you don't have to spend 40 minutes just to play one match. So if you've always wanted to try a MOBA, but League or Dota look like homework, Pokémon Unite is probably one of the easiest places to start. Number 3. Mobile Legends Bang Bang. If we're talking about the biggest games in mobile MOBA gaming, there's no way this game wasn't making the top 3. On paper, Mobile Legends is pretty traditional. The biggest difference is pacing. Matches aren't designed to be fast, usually around 10 minutes, so you're getting into fights, rotating, and making plays almost immediately. I think that's a huge part of why this game has gotten so big. It's easy to jump into, it runs well on mobile, and there's almost always something happening. You're not spending 20 minutes farming just for the game to finally get interesting. But we also have to talk about the community, because Mobile Legends is on another level in places like Southeast Asia. The game has professional MPL legends across multiple regions, and its esports scene has grown into one of the biggest parts of its identity. Now that doesn't mean everybody loves everything about it. Ranked and matchmaking can absolutely test your patience, and depending on who you ask, balance and monetization are always going to start an argument. But despite all that, people keep playing, and I think that says a lot. If you want a fast-paced competitive mobile with massive community and don't want every match turning into a 40-minute commitment, Mobile Legends is still one of the easiest games on this list to recommend. Number 2, League of Legends Wild Rift. This isn't League shoved onto your phone. Riot actually built the experience around mobile. It has all the strategy you'd expect from League, but the map and pacing are condensed and the controls were redesigned for a touchscreen, and that's what makes Wild Rift stand out. Out of everything on this list, this is probably the game that feels the closest to that full PC MOBA experience. So compared to something like Pokémon Unite or even Mobile Legends, Wild Rift can feel a little more demanding, but if that's what you're looking for, that's also its biggest strength. And Riot is still consistently adding champions, making balance changes, or even reworking things like ranked and matchmaking. So this definitely isn't some forgotten mobile spin-off. So if you want something polished, competitive, and probably the closest you can get to traditional League without actually sitting at a computer, Wild Rift is really hard to beat. Number 1. Honor of Kings. Honor of Kings spent years becoming absolutely massive in China before making its larger global push, and the experience definitely feels like a game that's had years to figure out what works. It's a traditional 5v5 MOBA with a huge roster of heroes inspired by mythology and history. But what really puts it at number 1 for me is how complete everything feels. Matches are fast without feeling overly simplified. The heroes have enough variety that you can find completely different playstyles and actually outplay somebody. One thing I keep seeing from players is praise for the hero designs, builds, balance, and just how consistently the game is supported. Honor of Kings was already recording 100 million average daily active users back in 2020, and it's continued building out a global competitive scene with regional leagues and international tournaments. So whether you're completely new to mobile MOBA games or looking for another game to sink too many hours into, Honor of Kings is probably the first one I'd tell you to try. It has the player base, the polish, the competition, and most importantly, it's just a really solid MOBA. So now, I want to hear from you. What mobile MOBA game are you playing right now? And more importantly, what game did I completely miss? I already know somebody is about to put me on to something new. So let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing to Ken Talks Games for more lists and deep dives on games worth talking about.